Good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, staff. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting for the Town of Pelham Committee of the Whole for Tuesday, September 8th, 2015, to order. It has been moved by Councillor Durley that the agenda for this regular meeting of Committee of the Whole be adopted. Are there any additions, changes to the agenda? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Next is a declaration of any conflicts of interest of pecuniary nature. Do any councillors have any conflicts of interest they need to disclose? There are none. Can that be so noted in the minutes? Thank you. Now we move to department reports. The first report has been moved by Councillor King that Committee of the Whole received the August 2015 Planning and Development Services Report for information. Questions or comments for Mr. Zimmer, who's in the hot seat this evening? Thank you for joining us. Are we good? We're ready? Mm-hmm. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Now we move to corporate services. There are a few reports here. The first has been moved by Councillor Riviak. The Committee of the Whole received the 2014 Building Department Fees Annual Report for information. Good. Mm-hmm. Councillor?
Love a reserve.
Love a reserve.
Love a reserve.
And I guess that's
there were
Mr.
years, the only reason I said there were years sometimes, and Councillor Durley and I can tell you that that was not exactly the case.
Right.
So this is
And
great.
that's Mr. Zimmer's department as well.
Yes.
I guess my question was, I think, was it not this top of the year when there was some discussion
Yep.
from staff that there might be a change in fees, and council said, well, let's wait and see what the reserves look like.
I think you got out of it, eh?
Maybe Mr. Zimmer, you can speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, actually, council, it was brought to council, and we are having a report done and a study done on the fees and the fee schedule by Glenn Tunnick, who did the original study for the town, and we're using him because he does have a lot of the information. However, he is away on holidays, and we are in the process of gathering information, and the treasurer has most of the information to give to me, and I know she's working on it. And then we'll be having a report brought to council, and I believe council also asked for input and a public meeting with the public, being the developers and the contractors, which is also planned to be done.
Okay.
We haven't set the dates yet, but we will inform council of that.
Okay, thank you for that. I guess the question I would have, and maybe you have the answer for this, but why do we need to do that if this shows a balance in the reserve?
Yes, this year it did, but I believe in other years, which was said earlier, there wasn't, and the fees were never brought up, even a small percentage, and we wanted to make sure it was done by an independent, and the fee was very reasonable to show the public that it's just not council or staff. It is an independent who says what the cost of running the building department is, because of Bill 124 makes us totally independent and have to base all our labor and everything else on our fee. So we wanted to bring in an independent just to, show that to the development community.
Okay, thank you. I think there was a policy that council approved way back when that occurred. There was some and I think council said this time around, some of us are still stinging from the comments that we received from some sectors of the community about that. So there's a policy in terms of the percentage that was in the reserve. So I trust that you've looked at that. So I see Councillor Kersey wants to just briefly speak about that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to raise the idea, referring back to, I think, where you were alluding to, which was that we did contemplate setting a target for the reserve so to create sustainability within the department for the lean years. And it seems to me it was something around 40% of the projected expenses. So if you take that, $394, 40% of that, you're talking $150,000 in the reserve, and we're really sitting only with 18,000. So it kind of does argue to the fact that we may need to either see a significant increase in the number of permit applications, or we may have to look at increasing the fees or a combination thereof. I mean, we did not transfer from town operating this year. We had projected that we were going to transfer $62,000, which we did not do, and I don't know whether that's advisable or not. Perhaps the treasurer could comment on that as well.
Madam Treasurer?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the transfer would be actually from the building reserve to cover off the deficit that was projected for this year. We did not have to do that, and they did have a surplus. So we did in the previous year do a one-time funding agreement with them because we had changed the way that the director and the admin was allocated to that because the department was reorganized. But the savings from 2014 are largely due to one-time savings, which are savings in salaries and so forth because of some changes within the department. So it does beg to suggest that we might want to look at how we are determining the expenses for the department and also the revenues for the department, and that's what this consultant can do
Correct.
for us. And to ensure that we're aligning with developing and maintaining a good base so that when there are years like this, because the growth won't be forever, and we need to make sure that the department is covering all the expenses, because currently, as you see, we're not transferring from the operating, and by what I mean by that is they should be, the building department should also pay for their overhead, and they are not paying for the overhead at this time. They simply can't afford it. And that's things like contributing to hydro and all those resources that we use in the town. Okay?
Counselor, anything further? Thank you for that.
We'll get you one day.
So my presumption, Mr. Mayor, is that all of that will be taken into consideration during the study, that the sustainability piece as well. So I look forward to see that.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. We look forward to that report coming to us. It's been moved by Councillor Papp. The Committee of the Whole received the 2014 final reserve balances as audited for information. Questions, comments? There being none, are we ready for calling the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It's been moved by Councillor King that Committee of the Whole receive the August 2015 Corporate Services Monthly Report for information. Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of points there with regard to numbers 5 and 6, points 5 and 6 in the report. 5 is about the Town of Pelham website, and I'm curious to know whether the whether the entry there is complete. The read staff continue to work to have processes on the website current with the provider, period, and then it seems mid-sentence it says scheduled with them in August. I'm just wondering whether there's something in between that we're missing.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, actually, that was, we were taking out some of the stuff from the previous report where we were setting up some timelines, and we must have just missed that.
Okay, good, excellent. The second one is a question with regard to item 6, Wi-Fi in Peace Park in downtown Fenwick. Just curious to know whether the numbers here are actually correct, or is there something out? It indicates the number of clients accessing Wi-Fi in Fenwick equal 287 for usage of 172.7 gigabytes, and the number of clients accessing Wi-Fi in Peace Park were 1,161, but their usage was only 22.48 gigabytes. Is that right? Are the numbers reversed? What's going on?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, this is correct.
It is correct.
Within Peace Park, you also got, you have the town staff are picking up the Wi-Fi as well. There's a whole bunch of business around here that would pick up the Wi-Fi as well, so it's largely where all of the summaries of all those little bits and pieces have been included in this one, where Fenwick is completely isolated on its own with respect to being able to pick up the exact number of people that are picking up that Wi-Fi, and that does include some of the library staff and so forth as well. We brought it forward this way this time, but I think next week or next month we will bring where we can separate what type of sites they're going to as well for council. The IT manager was on vacation, so we were unable to get all of the details from him before this report. But if council wants to see it broken down between Peace Park and Fenwick as to what type of sites they're going to, we can also provide that information.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think I'm quite clear. I think what our treasurer indicated was that the number of clients accessing Wi-Fi in Peace Park are considerably greater because it picks up staff, but the usage is only 22 versus 172 .2 gigabytes in Fenwick for a far, far smaller number. So that's the part that I'm concerned about. Why?
So it's a higher use per user.
That's exactly correct.
Fenwick.
What we're finding in Fenwick is the usage is, there might be one user that uses multiple megabytes of data daily. They're downloading items from websites, they're uploading items to other places. We talked about the seasonal workers, so communicating with family members in other countries and stuff like that. So we did notice that was a significant, there is some issues that we're currently having now with the pull on the library with respect to the data usage, and that we're trying to sort out as well because of this large number that's being utilized down there.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there's an issue there, obviously, which the numbers would indicate. Interesting, very interesting. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any others to those items? Any others to other items? Councillor Papp.
Very quickly, through you to Madam Treasurer, just so I'm reading the sanitary bat flu prevention incentive program. So from what I gather there, we have issued 50 applications at $1,000. That's it, right, at this point?
Yes, as indicated previously at the beginning, it was, it's like a mad rush to get in
Right,
here, and now
right.
it's just the one-offs, and we might get one every couple weeks or so.
Because I remember what we went through with all of that, and we put the money in. Okay, I'm just fascinated by,
That's good.
so 1/3 have actually used it. All right.
Thank you. Others? We're going to call the question then on receipt. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It's been moved by Councillor Kersey that Committee of the Whole receive the August 2015 Fire Services Report for information. Questions, comments? Thank you for giving us an update on the pumper, and I know that's okay, Councillor. We look forward to that coming future, so thank you for that. Councillor Rivyak?
Thank you. I had comment with regard to, I think it's the item regarding bylaw and park issues. And the suggestion that we take on part-time bylaw enforcement officers, or one, I guess, to deal with issues. And I think this is kind of worth discussing. I mean, I'm just trying to digest the notes that I made here in a hurry. In terms of the current cost of bylaw enforcement, given the extraordinary circumstances for which the part-time bylaw officer would be employed for, what the current cost is, the hours that are needed, and how many special bylaw enforcement officers would be required for a period of time. I'm not really sure that I have a full grasp of the issue here, and I wouldn't mind hearing more about it. I don't know whether now is the time, but at some point maybe a report just to describe the issue and get a sense of how many bylaw officers on a part-time basis would be useful, or if it's just one, whether that's going to be enough to deal with it, that sort of thing.
Thank you. I thought I read that we're going to be getting a report, Chief?
Not currently planning on putting the report together until I get authorized or move forward on it. So I'm just kind of keeping you informed, because we just recently kind of sat down and talked about the amount of overtime that we're incurring, and most of it is in lieu of, but it's still overtime. So if you take our bylaw officer, Craig, who works Monday to Friday, when I want him to go out on Thursday night for parking for any festivals, if I want him to, to patrol the skate park, because we've had problems down there with bullying, alcohol, so forth. We've had a variety of different things. If during the winter when it snows, and we want him to run through the night through winter patrol, that's on overtime, because he still does the Monday, Friday job. So if you look at how much he makes and quickly do the math, it doesn't take a lot of his overtime to easily
That's right.
assume one, so I'm looking at one person, 20 hours a week, given the amount that we pay casual, I would think $18,000 a year we're looking at for a part-time person. And we can easily, and then we can also, we've had issues through Vicky's department and Andrew's department. We've had vandalism. We've had, we just had a lot of different things happening around. So I know that the nighttime staff that work the parks, they go in and they clean and they empty garbage and doing, but that's pretty set routine. We want to kind of step things up and do more random inspections and have someone out there kind of keeping the eye on things. So I think it's just kind of an idea in infancy until I get further direction to move forward with the business plan.
Councilor Ribbiak and then Durley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's probably something really well worth doing, and I fully support the need to augment our current resources to a number that makes sense. I guess what I'm hoping is that the thinking isn't reserved to just thinking it's one person for half the time. Maybe it's 2 or 3 or 4 people, but for shorter periods of time to meet moments of greatest need. And I guess some analysis would be required about that. But certainly I would want staff to continue, the chief to continue down this road. I think it's an excellent way of dealing with a tough and expensive problem.
Okay, thank you very much, Councilor. Councilor Durley to the same
To the
issue?
same,
Go ahead, sir.
to the same point. My concern is a health and safety issue. If the problem is rowdyism, vandalism, and, in lack of a better term, gangs or groups of people that are causing this trouble, is it dangerous to send one person to do this in a night? I'm wondering if we're putting this person in jeopardy.
Mr. Mayor,
I hope it's not gangs, but
no.
I use that as in lack of a better term.
Right. Basically, the same rules would apply as I do have for our full-time bylaw officer, that we would never engage in anything that would be unsafe. So if he were to come across some kids that were doing whatever, vandalizing, and he thought in any way that there's a risk or a threat, police, just 911. He's there to gather information, take license plates, take pictures, take names, but if there's any, our staff know that we never engage anything, and if there's any slight chance of safety. So we would never do that. We're not gonna be policing, we're just making a presence to try to,
deter.
make, because we've been visiting down the skate park on a regular basis, and the kids know we're coming down there, and the complaints have really quite reduced themselves, right? Because they know we're hanging around there. So just the mere presence will deter the kids.
I'm glad to hear that, because I do have concerns about individuals. I know in other situations where individuals were harmed and harmed very seriously in situations that parallel this. So I'm not saying it'll happen here, but it's, in my opinion, something that really needs some attention. Thank you for paying attention to that.
Thank you, Councilor. Others to that? I think, Chief, you're suggesting you're looking for feedback from council. I think we're always looking for innovative ways to deal with issues. If you've identified an issue, come forward with your recommendation, your best recommendation on how to solve that. So,
Now's the time.
is that fine? So, not this meeting, but next meeting, you can come forward if it's a priority, as you indicate, critical, and dealing with this quickly. So it may be something that you can put on the next agenda for council's consideration. Okay. Anything further to that? Anything further to the fire and bylaw report? Chief, I'm gonna just maybe kind of move off to the side a little bit and bring in a conversation that we had at this council a couple of meetings ago, maybe half a year ago. But I think something that's a bit timely, and it's again trying to get ahead of it. We had the conversation here a while ago about dispatch, and that there was kind of a movement at the region to consolidate dispatch for fire, police, and EMS. And we had the discussion, but we were looking for additional information. I know that a member of the Police Services Board has been going around to councils talking about this issue, and just want to comment on, or get your comment on how we might kind of prepare for that. Did you have any recommendations?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, yeah, I've just been recently been told by a few other municipalities that, there's a, two-person kind of a show going around to councilors, council, and that's what they call it when they said, anyways, there's two people going around, and I believe one of them is a regional councilor, and the other one may be from the police board, or the police, services, and they're going to all the individual municipalities, and they're pitching the idea of amalgamating dispatch into one center. The feedback I've gotten so far is that they're showing up and really they're not prepared, the council's not prepared to ask any questions because they really haven't been given any information. I think there's a lot of good information out there that's available that I could provide you. I could, again, if you'd like a report, I could give you some type of report. That way when they do request to come here, you could probably ask some very good questions rather than them have a come in and do the pitch and leave and then we're standing around going whatever. So, you know, as I explained a few months ago, we're looking at maybe a $30 million capital investment region-wide to save $1 million a year. Our dispatch system is not broke. It works very good. I'm very comfortable with it. We get a very cost-effective delivery from the city of St. Catharines. I don't know how we could get it any cheaper than we do now. And they've got this grand idea that they're gonna go out and change the whole system. I just don't know where they're coming from. So if you'd like me, I could do that, do some research, I could give you that information.
Probably be prudent, more information and more facts are appropriate for council, especially if there's a roadshow, as you say, that's going around, talking about the benefits, but not knowing the entire picture. Councillor Papp, you specifically signaled you wanted to speak.
Sure. I couldn't agree more. I put together a briefing note that gives us the salient, succinct points about this, because I've been also briefed and heard about this. And without prejudice, that when they do show up, that we will be in a position to at least listen to them and present our facts for them so that we're, because as the mayor knows, and I've sort of known another, there's no obligation. This is being done for whatever reasons they feel that is to their benefit. But I also think that the chief of police has been very adamant about this as well, and he's been very, how can I say, trying to keep at arm's length out of this, because this is a debate that is could turn into something that's more than what we want. So that kind of briefing note, Chief, would be very, very helpful. And any other additional information, I'm sure, Mr. Mayor, you got. So we're ready for them when they show up.
Okay, thank you. Anything further to that?
Wayne
So,
here, can you print that?
Thank you, Chief. We look forward to putting together something.
So,
Oh,
Mr.
I'm
Mayor,
sorry,
is
Councillor
that in the form of staff direction then to have this report to come through?
If you, yeah,
I
if you'd
think
like
that's
that.
a great idea, because
Okay.
I'd look forward to seeing that as well, as being prepared as, not only the Boy Scouts, but we need to be prepared as well.
Okay, so, do you want?
I
should we
have it
move
as an
that?
action, Mr. Chair.
The clerk has it as an action.
Perfect.
I've issued it already as an action.
She's already put it on the computer, so it's already in his,
One step ahead.
it's in his email box.
Great.
Thank you for asking, Counselor. So we look forward to that. Thank you, Chief. Anything further to the Chief's report, bylaw fire? Great. We look forward to receiving those two items. More information. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Junkin that Committee of the Whole received the August 2015 Human Resources Department report for information. Discussion, Councillor, I thought you were signaling. Councillor Papp, you were signaling. Go ahead, sir.
Sure, just very quickly, just so I understand clearly, and that all of us, the community center organizational structural report itself, you are now in a position to, at some given point, to present back to us on how the community center, which I would presume would include all the other components, including the ice facilities, you've gone through that whole exercise and have got it ready, or you're not ready.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Gilbert.
This was really just highlighting my piece, the HR piece.
Your piece to it.
And what I could bring forward to the group.
Okay, that's
And
all I
we're
wanted
still-
to be clear on.
Yeah, this was just that HR piece.
That's fine.
As far
I'm
as the other
satisfied.
piece goes, still
Is that right, Mr. Sia?
Mr. CEO, can you comment on the whole, how all of SMT is working on that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the SMT group is working as, we are working as a team of colleagues towards a common goal, as opposed to one department taking a lead and
Okay.
presenting performance information. So as you can see, when we look at wage costs, we bring in HR. When we look at operating expense, we bring in public works. When we look at bean counting, we bring in corporate services, so on and so forth. So that when we ultimately come back and make a presentation to council, it's a united front from all of us as colleagues, and that council knows that it's not just an opinion of one person. It's a factual document presented by the entire group.
Perfect.
Thank you, and you did test that. She is awake. Thank you. Anything further to that, Councillor?
No, I'm happy. That's what I want. That's what I want to hear.
Thank you. Councillor Ribbiak,
To another part of the report.
go ahead.
Under total rewards, I see a couple of things that catch my HRI, and I just wonder whether we can get some more details. One is under benefits, the potential to offer a 3-tiered system. Just like to know what that is, and then I'll ask about the well-being after you've had a chance to.
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, now really focusing my strategy on the retention piece. I've been hearing just through my casual conversations with some of our staff that while there are benefits that we do offer here at the town are superb, we do have an opportunity, one, for some who wish to opt out of benefits because their spouse or significant other might have benefits already provided, and others to enhance their benefits if it's possible. So I'm working through our partners at Mosey & Mosey. They've been contacting Green Shield, and hopefully we'll have something to present to council, and then hopefully to staff that will allow them an option to once a year have what we would call an open window period, where they would have 2 weeks to go in, review the current plan that they have, and decide whether they want to keep it or perhaps downgrade or upgrade depending on where their life situation is.
Thank you. Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I take it that in that approach, not only is there the opportunity for the employee perhaps to save some money if they can offload some of the benefit to spouses or others, but also to invest more to create greater benefits for themselves?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So in the one tier would be, again, to opt out. You would have what I would call basically our core package is what we're offering now. Then there's the enhanced plan. The enhanced plan would be able to offer enhanced dental, vision care. That I want to make sure that we do remain net neutral to the town. So we would have the employee offset some of that cost. So there would be they would be participating in that benefit. But yes, they'd be able to increase their benefit plan.
Thank you. Very interesting, and I look forward to seeing where that goes. The other question is with regard to well-being and the EAP that presumably the town has in place. The EAP traditionally looks after personal problems of a health or related nature, but you're hinting at financial and legal and
Yes.
physical well-being, which suggests something around keeping well.
Yes.
So can you just expand on that a little bit?
EAP, Employee
Assistance Program.
Yes, so through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm very happy to report that in the last few years, maybe 5 years or perhaps even longer, EAP has moved past just supporting employees when they're in truly a time of crisis to really getting in there and being proactive and helping employees now before they get to that time of crisis. So I would like to see our EAP become, as I said, more about wellness and more holistic to offer assistance in certainly mental health, but also physical health, social well-being, legal, financial. So again, when we talk about legal, it's I want to move and I don't know how to go about, finding a new house. So not necessarily problems with law enforcement, but anything where I need some legal guidance of how do I move. Financial guidance, we have our employees here are at a wide range of stages in their career. Some first time moving out of the house that don't know how to budget, so we can offer them some financial assistance in order to keep on track with the budget and save for their future. So there's so many ways that this can go that again, we can truly make Pelham the employer of choice because we're offering just these so many services that they wouldn't necessarily get elsewhere to help them make their life an all-around wellness package.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I find it very interesting, Mr. Mayor, and I look forward again to seeing this area develop. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Director. Others to the Director's report. Thank you very much for providing information on the United Way as well. Very pleased that we are moving ahead with that, and thanks for being part of that and spearheading that. So I think it's great. Looks like some realistic goals and some champions among staff that are doing that, and a bit of a stretch goal, but a realistic stretch goal for the United Way. So we look forward to hearing more about that, and I would encourage, on behalf of council colleagues, to ensure that you also include council in your work on that too. So we're part of this too, and I know in the past, members of council have supported the United Way as well, along with many other charities too. So thank you for that, and thanks for your report. Any further comments, questions? There being none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Before we get too far, I'd just like to go back, it was on my notes here, to the fire and bylaw report for some great news, for some celebrating successes. Councillor Durley often says, just want to highlight that there are 10 new firefighters that started their training on September 3rd, 2015. So great to see these individuals put their names forward, to be part of the fire service, to be part of the family here in Pelham, to really add to the community. So I just want to say thank you to each of them for participating, for being part of the fire service, and thank you, Chief, for continuing that ongoing recruitment process. Thank you.
You turned my
Councillor Pat?
application down.
They turned yours down?
After 65.
I'm sure they can find it.
He couldn't get his leg up on the first one.
I'm sure they can find an appropriate role for you, Councillor.
I know, I've got one.
I didn't even apply because I knew they'd turn me down, so thank you very much. No, it is a special person, a special individual that does that, and, really trying to benefit the community. So please pass along our thanks, Chief, to those members. Thank you for your latitude, Council. Now we'll move to, it's been moved by Councillor Junget, the Committee of the Whole received the 2015 Public Works and Utilities Report for information. Councillor Durley, start it off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of issues that have been brought to my attention in the recent past. There's been concern about the markings of the speed humps on Haste. Some people are saying now, with it being more used by our Junior B fans and people coming to the arena and going up and down that road, that the little bit of signage there, which I believe is the minimum standard, that has been suggested, that some pavement markings to indicate where these things are might be something that would catch somebody's eye. Just before the election last year, there were little triangles put on there that lasted just about as long as the painting did, or maybe shorter. So something that could be in a little more permanent nature. Is this something that could be looked at? And also, some people have said center lines on roads, which tend to make the roads seem narrower. I drive down Line Avenue every day, and from Country Corner to halfway down the road, there's no line. All of a sudden, there's a line from there to Merritt Street, and I'm just wondering, did they run out of paint, or what was going on with that? And then, I'm wondering if these things under the pavement markings could be looked at to perhaps improve our traffic calming and our whole situations here.
A couple of issues the council raises, Madam Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's a list that's provided by our department to the region to do the pavement markings. The list, from what I understand, is really just, it grows every year with development that comes. I'm not sure when the most recent review of what's in and what's not in has been done. It's simply been created over the years and snowballed with complaints or concerns that have come up, but not every road gets painted. If it's in the list, it'll continue getting painted going forward. So as things have come up and we've had concerns, we've added them to the list, and that might be why one section has paint and then it ends. It's just because it's been a concern in the past, or development or whatever brought it there. The speed humps, I thought, were in the list. The region isn't finished yet, I'm told. We won't get billing for some time, but what I can do is go back and check on the status of where they're at, and perhaps check and see what we can squeeze in on the budget that we've got. But that would be the for the humps on Haste, it would be what was done before, the little triangular chevron type thing. If that isn't working, then they're quite open about suggesting alternatives of what they paint in other areas that might work. We've asked some additional painting regarding the pedestrian crosswalks on Pelham, so they're open and flexible. I can look into what might be more suitable for the approaches on the speed humps. But as for the line painting, suggestions are always good, and we'll put them in and adjust the budget accordingly for next year.
Thank you. Would it help as citizens' concerns or residents' concerns come to me, that I forward them to you to see if they are on that list? Would that help you in any way?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we could process those requests. I'd hate to get it to balloon to be everybody wanting to get their street done, but we try to compile it to say if there's enough of a concern and the engineering group and roads department understands or agrees that there's a compiled concern with needing to add markings on the more rural areas, then it can be added. It's just a matter of budgeting. That's really all it is.
Okay, and again, I don't want to make it a priority, just I want to make it, citizens' concerns to be raised with staff is something that is very important to me and to my citizens, so just an awareness is what I'm trying to look for.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, understood completely. It's really a matter of communication and getting the information in.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The second one was the stormwater management ponds, and we did have a discussion about that at a previous meeting, and I'm still getting calls from people, especially at the Timber Creek. They're still waiting for some communication, and I'm just wondering what the disposition is of there. Where I understand that it hasn't been assumed as yet, but has there been any process to help to mitigate the concerns that these people are having?
Ms. Clemencio?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have compiled the letter. It's more like a newsletter for staff. It just hasn't been issued yet. I apologize, just because of vacations and such. We haven't got it out, but it's ready to go. That's more of a response to the petition that came in.
Okay.
And the other piece, we have been trying to contact the developers, and that was this week. I've been away, but the engineering group has been reaching out to the three groups. We were trying to have maintenance done on unassumed ponds that are still the property of the developers. The one, they've already gone ahead and done some of the maintenance work, but it's in the works. We just haven't had successful communication. We were trying to reach out to them without issuing the letter. Based on the direction from the last meeting, we wanted to kind of keep this open communication and offer a meeting before we just issue a letter saying you've got to do it.
So I could assure these people that something will be forthcoming.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Others to the Director's report. Counselor Junkin and then Pap.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, on the item about Bridge 10, Sawmill Road, and we're taking the two twin culverts and replacing with a new bridge structure. So you're going to take those culverts out, and they're talking, this course handles a lot of water, and I take it they're getting changed because their life expectancy has been reached. So when you replace it, you're going to replace it with a concrete bridge, and if so, why were you doing it that way? The culverts, is that as cost effective as the culverts, or just explain that if you could, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure I have the answer for you. This is based on the recommendation through the consultant of what the best measures are for replacement of those. I can certainly bring something back to the next meeting. I
Okay,
apologize.
I just wondered why, I imagine that concrete bridge is a lot more expensive than dropping twin culverts, and I just wondered.
I can certainly bring something back for next meeting.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and that was approved in the budget for this year for that. Okay, we'll look forward to that information. Others? Oh, I had Counselor Pap, I apologize.
Very quickly, through you, Mr. Mayor, 3 quick points. Number one is, just after our council meeting, we were talking to one of our constituents, and Councilor Durley's in my area, and along with Councilor Ribbiak. So a question came up about the condition and the state of repair, or for that matter, maintenance of the park at the Pelham Arena. And the incident, the specific area they were looking at was the tennis court, which over years there has been, with all due respect, minimal done. It's being left and that's fine, but she was questioning just what we were going to do. So to the credit of Councilor Durley said, you know, send us a list of those things that you think need to be addressed, and we'll forward those on to you. A valid point, because she's watched everything going on, including that. But I must say, our staff have responded to requests from that particular area. So that's all we would ask, is if you could come back and just let us know what the plans are for that particular, whether it's you or Vicky, if there is anything at all. She was expressing a health and safety concern, and I'll just leave it at that. The other one is the big one that not a big, well, it is. I've been approached by several different people over several occasions in the last few weeks about the tree maintenance policy, let alone the removal of the dead trees. The question came up about those trees that are along our municipal properties, you know, that have overgrown, there's limbs falling, et cetera. And I found that fascinating. I guess it's my own, I always thought we had a formal tree policy, but I guess there isn't. It's just a sort of a protocol, if you want to call it. That's a good way of saying it.
Objectives, yeah.
It's sort of this is the way we do it. And I think there is a growing concern that while you're completing a lot of work, and I know the ash tree removal is a huge program, there is also concern that there are a number of different areas. Just like I said, using my own personal daily walks, people have approached, said, when are you going to cut this limb down? When are you going to replace the dead trees? So maybe we can ask you to come back with some sort of course of direction on how we can deal with this. Because I know at some point, correct me if I'm wrong, that if the trees were dead on our boulevards, do we actually replace those regardless of those? So there's been several, I have to say, that are showing up. And I know it's been dry, and I know all that, and I'm not putting any more, I don't want to put pressure. I think we need to come up with some little public statement that we are aware of it, and we are going to do something about it. Is that a fair to say, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, we'll get a response from Ms. Clemencio of this is really an objective, I guess, but what you're asking for, Councillor, is really for us to get more information on how we deal with,
Right.
I'll say, trees in general.
And what the nature is, that's right, Mr. Mayor. Like how far, I mean, I usually I don't get that, but there is lots, and I'm sure you have, and I'm sure people, you know, saying, when are you going to replace these trees? The limbs are, is it on my property, your property? So that would be helpful.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have generally 2 staff that are dedicated in the warmer months to trees. Amongst other parks responsibilities. So unfortunately, I think at the core of it, we are always in reactive mode. We are worrying about sight lines and safety to sidewalk pedestrians, and we rely on the public PSR requests that come in, as well as our own town staff. It's always internal. We'll get feedback from people saying, or internal staff saying, hey, I just drove down whatever, and we've got concerns. Roads staff help out when needed, but generally tree maintenance has fallen to the parks group. So it might uncover, although our principles, and there is more than what I put in here, this is just about removal, we have principles about maintenance as well. Use a lot of those words about striving to and efforts to, because we can't maintain a level of service that I think is expected yet. We'd like to bring that up, but right now, because of the way that our resources are, we might find there's a bit of a discrepancy there. And it's a good thing to uncover this, and we can dig into it and talk about the number of trees, the amount of maintenance they've done, the hours. We've got it all. It's really just digging into that level of service and what we want to do about it.
Thank you.
You've hit my point exactly, which I was going to get to the third, is when I read your opening statement, I have to, you know, notwithstanding what other groups have done, the workload, I'd have to say just on a general of what's happening within Public Works is increased tenfold. I without getting specifics, I'm watching as the level of, as you become more public related, people ask you for more service, the question comes up, can you meet that demand? And that's vital for us to be successful. So when we put on an expectation there, people are looking at us to respond. So part of that is, Mr. Mayor, that I think as we move through the budget process, and even as an intermediary step, that, and I'll use the tree maintenance program, I do agree, and I'm not casting any sort of criticism, that if you need those kinds of resources, that the staff be directed to come back and say how you would do that. Because I really don't think you can handle, I don't think it can be handled from everything that I'm seeing going on. So I would rather look at some other interim measures that could be done at least for this time period, if the fiscal resources and if the manpower is there. And I'm just thinking of we do engage a tree service company, right?
I was just going to get to that.
And, go ahead, Mr. Mayor, because we're along the same lines, that where you need to, and I'll leave that to the CEO, it's just, we don't want to get behind, and we don't want to be seen as we're saying we're going to do these things. And the parks, I think I have to say, not that you're not being stretched in other areas, I think you need to come back and say, here are some suggestions, how might we do this? And here's a perfect example of how might we address this. I have, like I say, over the years, normally this has not been but lately it's been, everybody's been watching and seeing, clear it up. And you're right, it can't be reactive, we have to be proactive. So what are the suggestions? I would look for those through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. CEO, and the Director of how to deal with that. If that sounds reasonable to you, thank you.
I think, Councillor, I appreciate you raising it, and I think the Director's indicated that this is the removal replacement objectives.
Right.
Some of us around this table will remember, for instance, back in, the ice storm of 2007.
Remember that.
When one street was devastated, the others that didn't have tree maintenance was devastated because in that particular case, the resident said, don't touch the trees. In the other case, it was taken care of and the street was fine, similar streets. And so council then decided we needed to increase the level of service to include service provided by an outside firm. Trees were identified, et cetera, and then plantings and all of that. So, and we've been maintaining that, I'll say, status quo of that level of service, but it sounds like it's something that we may need to look at again, given everything that's going on. So, Madam Director, it sounds like there's more here. You said there's more to this objective piece and there's more that can be done. So maybe it's something that we should talk about at an upcoming P&P, maybe not the next one, but the one after that. If resources are required or if resources need to be switched or something like that for a period of time, it's certainly something that council should discuss, get its head around. And at minimum, I think we need a tree policy that's a little bit more encompassing. So even when I think about things like Peace Park or the new, whether it's East Fawn Hill development, East Fenwick development, whatever that looks like, what is our policy? What are we using for all of that? So we have objectives, but nothing formal. And we might say we strive to include native species, but a developer comes in with whatever, trees that we may not accept, like whatever. It's got to be all sort of holistic in terms of the trees and see them as assets to the community, but also infrastructure that has to be taken care of. So, Madam Director, is that something that we can sort of talk about, get those numbers that you're talking about, the information, and have a little bit more of a discussion at maybe not the next P&P meeting, but the one after that, get a little bit more into it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I certainly can prepare that information, and the first group I'd go to would be staff. It's the tree maintenance staff. We do have our very talented, one of them is a teacher at Niagara College, so we could tap into what their thoughts are. That's the best resource going forward. They've got lots of ideas and would love to be part of that process.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow up on your comments about the trees, I think the trees are really only the tip of the iceberg, because if we look at what we are planning to do in East Fawn Hill, and we're adding in a significant amount of trails, we're adding a significant amount of parks and gardens and a public space and all of these sort of things. And if you look at the gardens that we currently have, we're having a struggle even trying to maintain the gardens and the grounds that we have. So maybe what we need to do is have a much broader look at the picture than just the trees, because that will fuel the discussion the budgetary discussions down the road as in anticipation of this growth and how we might approach it. Are we looking at permanent staffing? Are we looking at farming it out, hiring, relying on the expertise that's in the community on a contract basis, all of these sort of things? I think it would be worthwhile to look at. Let's not just look at the trees, let's look at the broad picture, and that will provide knowledge and.
Look at the forest, not the trees.
Yeah, exactly. Good line. So, I know it's a lot to ask, and maybe the timeframe, of our next P&P is a little bit short if we want to see that broader picture, but from my perspective, that's a better way to take it, is to take a broad look at it and move from there.
Okay, thank you. The CEO is anxiously wanting to comment on that and add to the discussion. Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is one of the opportunities where I can say that we're already on that project, and we have an interdepartmental team that's working on that very issue of how do we prepare for developing the resources we need as we grow, and specifically the points you raised. So that team will be reporting back, and we'll certainly be sharing that with council, but it is a big project, and I believe their timeline is December to complete. So you can expect something by year's end that would be a comprehensive report in that area.
And so that's the new piece.
Yeah, that's everything, Mr. Mayor.
And everything,
That's
but
correct.
that doesn't include the tree conversation that we had earlier, is that correct?
Well, no, but
Like
it's.
the maintenance and
But
removal
it would
and
be
all
the
that.
maintenance and the requirements to maintain the infrastructure.
New infrastructure.
And existing.
Oh, okay.
So it's the holistic look at the organization and the town, and responding to the needs and the expectations of the community today and as we grow, and making sure that we have the appropriate resources, and that we'll be making recommendations to council to that effect.
So would it be better to have this discussion of trees when we have that report, or do we have this inform part of that?
I think that the direction to staff to start working on a tree policy is a good direction, a good starting point. That's something that we would certainly do.
Okay. Counselor, thank you.
Further to what the CAO has said, I think we have a working committee, beautification committee, that has been structured, that this would be an ideal project for them to undertake, to look at our current status, make suggestions to staff on the type of maintenance that they'd like to see that could feed into that group. And, we have people that are willing to spend their time and have volunteered to do that. I think it'd be an excellent project for them to be involved in.
Okay, Counselor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Kersey, for referencing the Beautification Committee. To date, the Beautification Committee has been very task-oriented around things left to it from the previous committee, but its intention is within the next month or so to do some strategic planning using the processes that we have to look at a whole range of things. And I think it's timely that this should come up. I think the urban forest that we have is certainly an element of beautification, and I think that it can strategically be looked at as one of the objectives of the committee. So when we get to that facilitated process, we will be able to report out the strategic plan, and there may in fact be reference to that in there. If not, then obviously a different source may deal with it, but certainly there's an opportunity coming.
Okay, so I think that's a three-pronged approach. The one is really directing staff to start working on that tree policy and to have that discussion. I suggested the second meeting in October, the P&P meeting in October, if that works. The other is the interdepartmental team that the CAO spoke about, and then the third is the strategic plan for their group that the beautification committee is discussing. So it sounds like it's, with those three approaches, it's well in hand. Anything further to those issues? Okay, good discussion, thank you. Anything further to the director's report? Just a question about Port Robinson and the work there between Station and Rice. There was some, you do allude to it in your report. Some folks were asking me about it and looking for information, and was information communicated to that to those folks that are affected by the issue here, the deficiencies and the mailboxes, etc.?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Based on our discussion last week, we put together in the same format as the newsletter that's going to Timber Creek, information, but it has not yet been released.
Okay.
So it's drafted. I'm going to promise I'll get these out the door as soon as
Okay,
we
perfect.
can.
So it's the idea of communication, so.
Yes, I
It's important.
apologize, as I misunderstood from the previous meeting that it was us to communicate about connecting for septic bed decommissioning and such. I didn't realize that we wanted to reach out to them sooner just to give them an update on the project.
From what I've heard from folks, they're questioning where are we in the process, when are we going to be, as opposed to how might I hook up, what's going on, so it's essentially communication to residents saying, we haven't forgotten about you, and here's where we are in the process, so I appreciate that. Councillor Durley, to that?
Yes, I think the challenge that we're being faced with is the fact that people want timelines. It seems like everybody wants it done yesterday, and it can't all be done yesterday, but if they can get an idea of when to expect some action, I think this would be something that may satisfy the requests from these folks. And I know in the conversation with Timber Creek, which I mentioned earlier, when is this going to happen? And I don't know, it's a work in progress. There's a lot on the plate of Public Works. Same thing here, but if some indication of when, I think would be an important piece that may satisfy some of the questions that are there.
Good, okay, thank you. So look forward to that. Anything further on the director's report? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Ms. Clemencio. It's been moved by Councillor Durley that the Committee of the Whole receive the August 2015 Recreation, Culture and Wellness Department report for information. Okay. Questions, comments? Some great work and promises of reports in the future in terms of various festivals and events and things that the department has been doing. Madam Director, I just wonder if the stats that are here, if you could look at them and put them a little bit more into context. You do that, for example, in the commentary. 2014 it was 148,000, now it's 156,000. It's just, it'd be helpful if there's some context. Is that good or bad that it's whatever the junior B used 24.75 hours? Just maybe if you could look at that and turn your mind to that for the next report. What do these numbers mean? Is it good, bad, or ugly? I don't know. Anyways, are they the, give us some context on the numbers. I think would be helpful for council and the community. Thank you. Councillor Papp?
Sure, and along those same lines, under number 3, they had incredible, just so I'm clear through the director, these numbers include not only people attending the supper market, but those attending the concert. Is that correct? So it's not really, is this a supper market summary, or is this a concert series summary? Or both?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The number of attendees are only in the supper market area. That's where it's gated, and that's where we count. Anything that's going on at Bandshell area, that does not include that area.
So how do we know what numbers were there?
We don't.
The only one you know is the beach party.
So we got what's that?
Summerfest.
Ms. Van Ravensway to that?
So this
or
is-
Councillor
yes.
Kersey?
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay. Councillor, go ahead, Councillor.
I was just going to add to what Ms. Van Ravensway said. The park was fully controlled during Summerfest.
Right.
So that's the 7,400.
That's right.
That represents all of the
all of the
utilization.
activities, right?
Right. Other than those people that stayed outside the fence.
But in the rest of the weeks, it was just the supper market area, licensed area.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. It's only in the fenced area. We've seen over 40,000 attendees in the supper market area. I guess if you want to say it, the week of Summerfest, July the 16th, tends to throw the figures off. Sorry about that.
No, it doesn't throw them off, and that's what I'm purposely trying to get the data to figure out, and I'll be looking forward to report, sorry, Mr. Mayor, to see what the economic impact of all of this is. We need to know, I mean, not need to know, it'll be interesting to see if that many people, what did they spend? I mean, you'll get that from the vendors, they'll say it was a great year, our business was up 25, 30%, that just helps, I'm sure, preparing for next year's logistics to expand, so that's what I'm looking forward to, and I think Councilor Kersey, you helped me with that, I was just trying to put my head around it to figure out what exactly, so if there's 40,000 people spending an average of $20 a person, that's $800,000.
Correct.
That went through that, that's huge. As Billy Facilla would say, it's
Huge.
huge.
That's a huge.
You know, that's a lot of money going through that area, and that's great. That's really great. It'll be interesting to see the impact, the spin-off effects of that. Also, I wouldn't mind, and we'll talk more, what the impacts were, as you and I, we about the local businesses in the Font Hill Square, whether any of those picked up volume, or, you know what I mean, traffic. So I'll leave it at that. That was my only question.
Good, thank you. Yeah, the numbers are very impressive. Thank you. Councilor Durley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just the trilogy of Thursday night, all three groups, we had some major controversy at the beginning of this particular season, and it was indicated that we should get together and discuss on a go-forward basis what's going to happen after this year is done. I noticed that the three groups are going to wrap up a meeting after October 8th when the farmers market is done, but there needs to be some discussion to come forward to see what direction we're going in next year. I've heard differing comments from people at the band shell. Why isn't the whole place licensed, and don't license it, and so on and so forth. What we need to do is come up with something now so that those planning for next year can use the new boundaries for their plan, and I think this is imperative to get to this sooner rather than later, because it was indicated by announcements by the band shell committee that they will be starting to look for entertainment for next year very soon. So they want to know what parameters they're going to be offering to sponsors and so on and so forth. So I think it's important that we do that, and certainly after the farmers market meeting there, if something can be done to come forward with us so that we can sit down with these groups and make a final decision, I think that's imperative.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, staff, it was suggested to wait until after the farmers market ended, which is October the 8th. We do have other wrap-up meetings going on these next couple of weeks, and we can contact both groups and ask if we can push that up. I'm sure that a couple of weeks with farmers market still running, it wouldn't sway the outcome that much. And we will try to have a report back to council the beginning of October, so we can plan for next year.
That would be perfect, and certainly was indicated at the time of the how might we's that we went through that this is completely necessary. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Others? Thank you. I hazard to ask this question, Ms. Van Ravensway, but back in the spring, we had an item of correspondence from some Uptown Font Hill merchants. I don't see anything here. Are there any updates on that? They wanted a celebration.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in August, I believe I reported on it in August. This was August. I believe it was the end of July. I met with Kerry Warden from the Lazy Loon, and he suggested that we wait till after July and August is complete. He had personally tried to set up meetings with the business group, and it was difficult.
Okay.
So he asked that we meet again in September and perhaps come up with something.
That's perfect. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Anything further to the director's report? Thanks for the great work. Lots of stuff going on. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It's been moved by Councillor Papp that Committee of the Whole receive the August 2015 Clerk's Department report for information. Questions, comments? Councilor Pap?
Very quickly, I'm just happy to see that number of insurance claims processed has dropped by 2/3. And if that's good,
There's a lot of numbers that have gone down there.
they've all gone down.
Deaths registered is down too, which is probably a good thing.
Of course, the cemeteries again.
Hence less insurance.
Less
Lots of
insurance.
insurance claims. And lottery license issues. We've stopped gambling, we've stopped doing other stuff.
And nobody got married yet. Anybody get married? No. No. Good.
Anything else to the clerk's report? Thanks very much for the update on accountability and transparency. Look forward to that in October. And also pleased that the clerk is looking at the code of conduct. I know that that's a hot topic, especially in sort of the northern part of Niagara. So it's good that the clerk is kind of turning her mind to that and will bring forward some recommendations to council in the future. So thank you. Anything further on the clerk's report? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. It's been moved by Councilor Ribbiak that the Committee of the Whole receive the August 2015 Chief Administrative Officer's Report for information. Questions, comments? Councilor Powell.
Well, I said I would do this, and I'll keep it very brief. I wanted to sincerely thank Darren Ottaway and Kerry Pupo, and whether it's a conflict or not, the work they did with our board of our Welland Rotary Club was extraordinary. The individuals that showed up for this How Might We session last week cut across many high professional levels. They are bankers, they're lawyers, they're doctors, they're involved in the whole area. They have never been exposed to anything like this. And to say the least, within 2.5, 3 hours, we were able to come, I'd say halfway through preparing our particular club for a long-term strategic plan. One more session to go. Folks, and I say this with all due humbleness, I've received nothing but accolades about how it was handled professionally, and obviously your training paid off. There were some pretty controversial discussions about topics that are sometimes very sensitive topics about membership and who we are and what we are. And there's no doubt in my mind this works very effectively, both externally and internally. So many thanks, Darren, to you. And Darren, thank you to members of the council for allowing them to spend the time. And hopefully we'll have one more time with you, and that's it. And I would suggest, as I mentioned to Darren before the meeting, at some given point, we should use the auspices of the municipal world to write an article of what has happened with the implementation and use of this particular methodology, both internally and externally, and describe it in the context of what has the impact it's had on our ability to move forward. Thank you very much for that opportunity.
Thank you very much, Councilor Pappen. It is, it's certainly something that I spoke about it earlier in the PIA program that the CAO speaks about from his context. From mine, it was that as well, that we do need to quantify it a little bit better. There's been some written on it, but not, and some reports coming to council, but not, it's not all quantifiable. So that's the first piece. The next is to promote it to others, both here at the region and across the region, and the country is what you're suggesting with Municipal World.
Yes, to share this.
And even the discussion we've had about AMO 2016 might be an option, so thank you for that. Something that we definitely need to work on. Councilor Ribbiak, to that or to another issue?
To that, in at least a very general way, I wanted to borrow, if I could, from Councillor Papp, all the eloquence with which he expressed appreciation for our CAOs and treasurers' participation in a creative problem-solving session. We had one this afternoon about an issue in which there was at least, I would say, a fair amount of emotional investment that might have made the discussion of the issue a great deal more difficult than it turned out to be. It was an extremely important and effective outcome. And so I just wanted to express my appreciation certainly for their participation in it. And again, job well done with people who are not used to being in that process.
That's right.
And for who might have it might have been understandable that there might have been some resistance to participating in that process, but there wasn't. It was extremely well handled. The outcome was a really good one, and I think there's something here that is of extreme value both to us and to, as Councillor Papp and you have indicated, Mr. Mayor, something to be shared with others. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. CEO, I don't know if you want to comment any further to the kudos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the thank you for the endorsement. Really, it's skills that the municipality has encouraged all of us, my colleagues, to embrace, which I think we have. We got a long way to go, but I'm pleased that the results are paying off. I notice it internally within the organization, and I think externally, the ability for staff as a whole to be able to live the vision of being vibrant, caring, and creative in Niagara. I think that we can demonstrate that through our actions, which is very powerful, and I appreciate Council's foresight and innovative thinking in those areas to allow us the ability to do that.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wonder if this could be moved into a, I just lost a word, revenue generating service as we go to the external groups. I know when we're using it for town stuff, it's be there, and I see the treasurer is smiling with this one. Again, if we're farming our skills out and our expertise of the people involved to groups that are not actually parts of the town, if a fee for service might be in order. I'm just bringing this out.
Brainstorming here.
Bringing that out first, just something to discuss in the future, perhaps. There's possibilities there.
Absolutely. I know the treasurer's thought about it, dreams about it, right, Madam Treasurer?
Keep sending the invoices, but nothing comes back.
I'm not sure they get approved, right? Thank you. So it's something that we'll let staff consider. It could be some sort of, if you get to a certain level or whatever. So, Mr. Zia, if you could look at that. I was thinking about just the, to build on that, to build on what Councillor Papp said, and to build on what Councillor Ribbiak said earlier about the committee, the beautification committee. So we heard Councillor Ribbiak saying that the beautification committee is going to take this and develop its own strategic plan, in essence, that really follows through, as I understood it, from the town's strategic plan.
Yes, exactly.
And so we redid all of the committees based on our strategic plan, and some of the committees are trying to transform, as Councillor Ribbiak indicated, from a more task-oriented committee that puts on special events into one that thinks more broadly, similar to the things that Councillor Kersey was speaking about. So I was thinking about that actually last week, and the CEO and I had a conversation that perhaps it's something that each of the advisory committees could do for council. I know that one of the things we talked about not only was that they're formed out of the strategic plan, which is our document, and they should be, but the other was we need them to come to council for budget and say, here's, and we're looking for, here's our plan for the next year, and here's how much budget we need. Do you agree with the plan, and therefore do you agree with the budget? So it might be an interesting way for those groups to continue, to spread the word about the process, how it works, to use it in the context like some of these nonprofits have used for strategic planning. Also align with some of the council goals in terms of what are these groups doing over the next year, and how much do they need for budget, and do we agree with what they're doing over the next year, or do we want to add something to their process? So I just raise it here. Councillor Papp's nodding his head feverishly. I think it's something that maybe those colleagues that sit on those committees ex officio could recommend, or we could recommend as direction from council. So just maybe some quick feedback on that.
Well,
Councillor Pat?
quickly, yes, the Pelham Seniors Advisory, that's exactly what we went through. That's exactly what we did about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And now I'm glad to hear that. It worked great.
So and this might be an annual kind of retooling and saying, okay, here's what we did, and just like we do with the strategic plan. Here's what we did, here's how we fit in the strategic plan, what are we gonna do this year? Oh, let's dot this one, circle this one, and say, okay, here's the one we're gonna work on this year. We worked on that one last year in the challenge map. Let's work on this one. Mr.
Yeah.
CEO, do you want to add to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it would be a great idea for example, the start of the new calendar year to have all of the committees of council develop a challenge map that would in essence serve as their business plan for the year. It's something that we'll be implementing on a departmental level as well. And I think to identify what is their core business service they're offering, and who is the customer and how does it relate to the strategic plan or critical elements. I think that the council forms committees and has come a long way in orientating them back to the strategic plan. However, I think a lot of the committees have a very easy tendency to go off on their own quests, if you will, based on the personalities that happen on the committee or the issue of the day. And I think that a sort of a business case for all of those that would be approved by council would provide the clarity and guidance that these committees need to fully achieve the mandates that council's created them for.
Thank you for that, for building on that. Councillor Ribbiak?
Thank you. And just to add, at least from the experience that I'm having, I'm not sure that our advisory committees at this point are aware that they've been formed in order to be useful to council. That is, that their objective in life ought to be to come to council and make recommendations and suggestions. I think that there's a sense that we've asked them to kind of look after an area of business and kind of be involved in stuff, not understanding that we're really looking for their advice so that we can have make improvements to the towns in accordance with the strategic vision that we have. So I think that there's some further education that probably needs to happen along with this process about what exactly we're looking for, looking to advisory committees to provide.
Good. So we don't have all the information here this evening. We don't have, for instance, the committee policy, is that the right term? That we did approve of a policy on committees, but maybe we could ask the CAO to take a look at that and make some recommendations so that we can further streamline it and have the committees use the process, report back to council on where their business plan or their work plan fits in with the town's strategic plan and therefore also fits in with a budget. So, Mr. CEO, maybe that's something you could take a look at in relation to that policy that we did talk about and approve at the beginning of the council term. Okay, so everybody okay with that? Don't we task them to do that? Okay, great. Anything further from the CAO's report? Some great work. And I do want to say, when you highlighted here in terms of department overview and statistics, really encapsulating what's going on in the month. So I appreciate you doing that. Lots of activity, lots of work in areas that we didn't even talk about, but thank you for that. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. We do have an item of new business here, and it has been moved by Councillor King. The Committee of the Whole received the issue summary report, female change room request, Pelham Marina, for information and provide direction to staff regarding renovations. Any discussion regarding this? Councillor Kersey?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I don't know who to direct this to, but I'd like to know where we would create this. Where in the arena we would create it, what the consequence of creating it would be. We're stretched to the limit there for change rooms as it is. Yeah, so that's a good starting point.
Ms. Van Ravensway, can you give us a little bit, or who's going to answer this?
Sure, yep.
Ms. Van Ravensway, you'll take the hot seat on this one. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We met on site with minor hockey as well as Darren was also there, and Kim Holland, facilities manager, and we looked all aspects of the arena The only, as it is mentioned here, there was mention of the storage area at the back corner, although washroom facilities and also not being close to the coaches during, that is an issue. What we are suggesting is there's a small utility closet that right now is a janitor's closet that could be turned into a washroom facility, as well as the furnace room area is fairly large, and that is side by side, and that could turn into a small dressing room facility.
So further down the hall,
So
from
if
the
you-
dressing rooms and the refs room.
Correct, if you pass the dressing rooms, there's a hall, and there's the referee's room. Right beside the referee's room is the janitor's closet, and right beside that is the furnace room, which is now being also used as storage of miscellaneous items.
Counselor? Kersey?
Okay. I guess the one question that pops in my mind is probably the smallest item here is $375 a month for rental of a hot water tank? Are we supplying the entire arena? Or is, I don't get that one.
Very large.
But I mean, that's a minor point.
Would it need its own hot water tank is what you're asking?
No, not that size, I wouldn't.
Mr. Mayor, I believe that hot water tank, we'd have to replace the hot water tank that is in the building now and move it, and that is what needs to be replaced. Yeah, it's not actually for
Right.
the change room.
Well, given that we're at least a couple of years away from any new facility and we've put this request off now at least for 2 years or 3 years, maybe we just have to swallow hard and get it done. You know, you hate to spend money in a facility that is antiquated and, you know, maybe heading in towards a demolition ball, but we have the need now and we have to service it for at least another 2 years, so I think we probably need to spend the money. So I would support moving ahead with it.
Okay, thank you. Others? Counselor Papp?
No, I'm
Okay.
concur.
Okay, others? So in terms of the direction from council, would, the motion just on the floor is just to say provide direction, so we'd actually need a resolution, is that correct?
Okay.
Okay, so we'd like to see a motion. Would you like to make that motion, Councilor
will,
Kersey or
sure.
Councilor Papp?
Absolutely.
That we direct staff to proceed with this and report back to council?
And report back with a detailed estimate. And, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Anyone else to that amendment? Pardon?
I think Andrea has something.
You think the Director of Public Works has something to add? Madam Director?
I
Don't be shy.
apologize. I was just trying to be subtle. The facilities manager also wanted to note, and it didn't make it into the report, she's been on vacation, but because it's the furnace room that would be being retrofitted, we're talking about some major upheaval to the schedule for water shutdowns, HVAC, electrical, it all runs through the furnace room. So doing this work now that ice is in is going to be much more complicated than it would have been doing it in the off-season. So these prices are from 2014, they're budgetary, it was just to bring something back to say this is what we're talking about. But that's why the direction here is we can go out and get more formal quotes and more details on how that work would be done. But she figured it was about 3 weeks of being upside down, and it would affect the teams and the ice time. Just want to make sure that was noted.
Well, we'll come back with,
Give us a report.
Mr. CEO?
we'll come back, Mr. Mayor, with that information answered and present
Okay,
in
good.
more detail before the council.
Yeah, we at least need the info anyway.
So we're saying take the next step,
Mhm.
Get some info.
Okay.
okay? And obviously, part of that is, it says facilities reserve, if that can be confirmed, et cetera, in terms of the payment for it as well. Okay? So what do we have for the motion? Is that gonna direct staff to kind of take the next step?
Proceed with preparing a more detailed
So the motion is to direct staff to proceed with, what did you say?
Have to proceed and report back with detailed estimates.
Thank you. Proceed and report back with detailed estimates. Okay? I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Any opposed? That amendment carries. Now to the main motion as amended. Any further speakers? No. There being none, I call the question as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. We look forward to that information coming back so that perhaps we can satisfy the need that's been expressed for a number of years. It's been moved by Councillor Durley that this regular meeting of Committee of the Whole be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for Monday, September 24th, 2015. Is that right? 21st, 2015, unless sooner called by the mayor. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. The air got
Satisfying.